What's good, YouTube? Brian here, back again with another video. And today we are talking about one specific technique, one specific type of rigging, and we're going to go over a bunch of baits and lures and tackle that you can use to try this technique, and it is called the free rig. Now, what is the free rig? The free rig, this technique and this style of fishing is not new to fishing. River fishermen have been doing this for years. Walleye fishermen have been doing this forever, like for live bait rigging. But downsizing this and using it in bass fishing with spinning tackle is now known as the free rig. Now, what is the free rig? Let's talk about the actual rig really quick. It's really simple. It's whatever hook you want on the back end, right? Weightless, or a non-weighted hook, just your regular, you can put literally any kind of hook you want on the back. I typically run 3/0 or 4/0 EWG offset hooks. Then you're using a free-flowing open eye drop shot weight. So, most drop shot weights have the pinch. You put the line in, you pinch it, you maybe throw one overhand knot on it, and you call it a day. You're in this rig are using an open eye drop shot weight. There's a lot of places that you can get these. I'll leave links in the descriptions. The one I'm using this year is from our friends at Bass Tech. It is a tungsten version called the free weight. They're calling this the free weight. I'll leave links where you can get this stuff. But they made a really nice matte black drop shot weight that has the open round eye, which makes it perfect for free rigging. Now, I put a little bobber stop in front of the hook eye. Now, the reason I do that is when you're fishing this rig a lot and you're putting a lot of time on this, the weight is going to slide up and down the line, and it is going to hit that knot over and over and over. Now, I trust these weights. I don't feel like there's a lot of sharp edges or any kind of material on this weight that would cut into the knot, but bobber stops are cheap. So I threw a bobber stop on this just to give some protection of from the weight to protect the knot of it. So this weight isn't smacking into the knot all the time. It's going to hit the rubber stop, and I feel that that's going to give me a little more confidence that my knot is not going to lose its durability while I'm fishing this all day. So now this is it. That's the free rig. A sliding drop shot weight and a hook. It's very, very simple. Now I'm throwing this right now, and this is similar to my setup last year. This is a different setup this season, but really you can throw this rig on any 6'8" to 7'6" spinning rod. You can throw it on a medium or a medium heavy. It's really up to you what rod or reel you want to throw this on. There's not a specific setup that you need. Any spinning rod is going to be fine. Any medium power spinning rod is going to be great. You could even throw this on a medium heavy if you want to use a slightly beefier hook and maybe heavier line. Now, my setup that I'm going to be throwing the free rig on next year is a Megabass P5 Windbuster, and I got a Kage MQ 3000 spooled with 10-pound Daiwa J-Braid Grand to a 8-pound Seeger Invisix fluorocarbon leader. So if you're wondering what my personal setup is for the free rig, this is it. Now, the free rig isn't new. I used to fish down in the Minnesota River for carp and catfish, and we would use this very similar rig to this, but we would use a big, heavy, like 1.5 ounce to 2 ounce slip sinker that would freely go up and down the line to a big hook where we would throw cut bait on, and we'd throw it out into the river. The sinker would sit on the bottom, and then we would have bait clickers on the bait casters that we'd put it into the clicker mode, and then when a fish came by and grabbed it and pulled it, it'd go click, 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 and then we could set the hook. So this is a very similar technique to what walleye guys do. So a lot of walleye guys have been calling this rigging for years, where they put a bullet or a barrel a barrel sinker on their line, and then they'll have a leader to a it's very similar to a Carolina rig, but they'll have a free-flowing barrel swivel with a hook on the end with a live minnow or a night crawler or a leech or something, and then they throw it out and they fish it sort of similar to how you fish the free rig. So anyway, my point is, this free rig technique is not anything new or innovative. It's just different, and it's got a new name. So now, the free rigging is a really cool technique because you can the world is your oyster. There's no right or wrong way to do this. So you can throw pretty much any kind of bait on the back of this that you want. You can throw any kind of hook. You can change the weights. I fished the free rig last year up shallow along the bank in like 2 to 4 feet of water, and I caught fish. And I also threw this technique out in 25 feet on rock piles or like sand to gravel transitions or grass lines in deep water, and I caught fish it's a very versatile technique, and it kind of works everywhere in the lake. It is a great alternative to throwing a drop shot. However, this does go on the bottom. So the nice thing about the drop shot is your bait is up off the bottom, right? So if you're fishing soot or murky or mucky bottom, soft bottom, this is still probably not the ideal presentation, because this is going to make contact with the bottom. Like this bait's going to come down to the bottom and touch the bottom. So if you're trying to keep your bait up off the bottom, the drop shot is probably still your best alternative, or the best technique to do that with. But the free rig is fun to fish. So how do you fish the free rig? Well, my most common bait to throw on the back of the free rig last year was a small finesse craw. Now this is, I played around, I used a lot of different baits, and I actually caught fish on pretty much everything. But my favorite, and the one I caught the most on, was something simple like a 3 to 4 inch crawfish bait. And I used it with a 3/0 offset shank, a 3/0 offset EWG hook. This particular hook is an Ichikawa, but I also use the Gamakatsu offset EWG hook as well. So it's really simple. You're just going to rig this thing weedless. This does come through cover okay. The weight will get hung up on. I mean, you're not fishing thick grass with this. Your weight will get hung up. So that's all I do. That's all I rig it. I bury the hook into the plastic. You can have that hook point come out and Texpose it if you want. It's up to you. It depends on the cover that you're fishing. But that's pretty much it. This is my most common free rig setup last year. I caught largemouth with this. I caught a ton of smallmouth with this. Now, how do you fish this technique? This is a lift and reel kind of technique. This is not like a drop shot where you throw it out, you let it hit the bottom, and you just kind of sit there and you do a shake, shake, shake. This is a fun technique to fish because it's very interactive. So you're essentially casting this bait out, letting it hit the bottom, and what's happening is the weight is hitting the bottom first. So you can imagine when the weight hits the bottom, boom, hits the bait, hits the bottom of the lake. This bait behind it is fluttering. It's coming down, slow, 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 and then as you pull in the line, it's going to connect to the knot. It's going to connect to the weight, right? And then what you do, it's very simple, is you just lift. So while you're fishing it, you're just going to do a lift. You're going to pull that weight up off the bottom, and then you're going to lower your tip, and you're going to let that weight swing back down, and then that bait is going to come off the bottom, and it's going to pendulum and wiggle and float down. And so it's just a lift, reel it in, let it sit. Pull it up, reel in your slack, let it sit. It's just a lift, and often the bite will happen while that bait is fluttering down, much like a Carolina rig. You guys who fish Carolina rigs, this is nothing new. It's very similar. But a lot of times you're going to feel when you reel in that line and you get it taut a little bit. So once you get rid of some of that slack, you'll feel thunk, or you'll feel the weight not being hit on the bottom anymore and it moving. You'll feel the fish pick it up. And then I suggest doing a pretty good hook set. So because you're using an EWG hook, that fish usually has the whole thing in their mouth when they eat it. I usually reel down and crack them a little bit with a hook set. And that's how I had a really good hookup ratio doing that last year with an offset EWG hook. You can do the reel down and pull back if you want, but it's fun to just kind of crack them on a spinning rod and drive that EWG hook into their mouth. Now, this technique is really good for deep water. So if you fish a lot of offshore, you should really try working the free rig into your arsenal, especially around boulders, rock, gravel. This technique for some reason does not get that hung up, especially when you use a really nice slender weight like the one from Bass Tech here. This does not get that hung up on rock piles. Football jigs get hung up, Texas rigs get hung up, drop shots get hung up. For some reason, this thing comes through the cover pretty well without getting a lot of hang-ups and having to break off. So if you fish a lot of rock, you fish a lot of gravel, you drag around on deep water a lot, this should be a technique you're trying, and you should add this in your arsenal. And what also is nice is I usually run about a 1/4 ounce. I always start with a 1/4, and if I'm fishing deeper or it's windy, I will bump up to 3/8. So I'd say between 1/4 and 3/8 is pretty much all you need. I even use 1/4 ounce for up shallow. So like in shallow water, I was still using 1/4 ounce and it was perfectly fine. You can really cast this a ways because this has some heft to it and the weight sits down right at the hook. you can bomb this rig out there a pretty far distance, especially with like a longer rod, like in this case it's a 7.2. Last year I used a 7.3 and a 7-foot most of the time. And yeah, you can make big long casts. You can get that bait way out there and do a lot of hop and drags back to your boat. You can vertically fish this, but this is more of a technique that is effective when you're making big long casts and throwing it out there and you're doing that lift, reeling up the line, letting it sit, pulling it up off the bottom, reeling, sit. You know, it's just lift, reel, lift, reel. That's all you gotta do. So what baits do I like throwing on the back of this thing? The world is your oyster. Much like a Carolina rig, whatever the heck you want to throw on the back of a free rig, you can. My favorites were the X-Zone Finesse Craw, the 3 1/4 Muscleback Finesse, a Senko, whether you use a 5-inch or actually a 4-inch works really well as well. Just throwing a Senko on the back of this, you know, adjust your hook size accordingly to the size Senko. Senkos work really good on the back of a free rig. Highly suggest that. Texas rigged, not wacky rigged. The old Rage Craw, Rage Grub, the Menace. So the Menace is also a great bait to throw on the back. It's very similar to the Muscleback Finesse Craw. You know, if you don't want the flappy arms going, you can just leave them attached. You don't have to break the flappy arms loose if you don't want to. But the Rage Grub is also a great free rig bait. Also a Strike King, the Rodent. The Rodent, which is like kind of a finesse beaver style bait. Anything like a rodent or the actual Strike King rodent, this is also a really good free rig bait. If you want less action and you don't want it to do much, the beaver is a good option. Now in JDM tackle, there's two favorites. So if you want to spend a little more, money and you want to go a little crazy, the OSP Dolive stick. This is one I threw a lot last year and it caught a lot of smallmouth. Smallmouth love the OSP Dolive stick. So this is the 3 1/2. You could go up to the 4. I think there's a 4 1/2 or 4-inch. But this is the smallest one I would throw. I wouldn't go lower than the 3.5. I've tried the 3-inch and it's a little too small. But this is kind of like the sweet spot. So if you could pick up the Dolive sticks in 3.5s, this is a good one. And then also, this is kind of like, this is if you're in a bluegill lake and you have a lot of bluegill and brim, the Depths bull flat, and I forgot the size. It's 3/8. So the 3.8-inch bull flat. This is kind of like the industry standard free rig bait in Japan. Now this one has a bluegill profile. The 3.8 works really good on a 3-inch or even going up to a 4-inch. Actually, I'll probably go to a 4/0 hook for this thing. I think maybe the 3 would be maybe a little small. Yeah, I would definitely. When I threw this last year, I'm pretty sure I used a 4/0 EWG offset hook. But anyway, so the bull flat, you're gonna rig it. You're gonna rig it flat like this, as the name says, a bull flat. And you know, when you pull it off the bottom, the bull flat's gonna go up, and then it's gonna just glide on its way back down. It won't roll over on each side. It just kind of floats and glides back down, and it has a very bluegill looking profile. These are more expensive. You can't get a pack of bull flats, especially in the 3-inch, 4-inch. They're really hard to find, but if you can find them, they're about $10 a pack. Same with these Dolives. So you're looking at like $10 a pack for the Japanese JDM plastics. And then, you know, your Musclebacks and your Strike Kings, these are like $5. So half the price, still gonna get a ton of bites. This was my rock star last year. I just threw this the most because I have them. They work real great. They stand up. They got good action, and they fit really nice on that little 3/0 EWG hook. So that's how I fish the free rig. It does work. Is it an alternative to drop shot? Yes. Do I still use the drop shot all the time? Yes. I actually, a lot of times I had both the free rig and the drop shot on my deck. So I would drop shot when I needed to fish vertical, or I wanted to throw out like longer, you know, like robo-style worm baits. But then when I wanted to throw out like a craw or a creature, the free rig came out. And it's a great technique. It's fun because it's really interactive. You're not just sitting there shaking things, looking at a screen. It's bombing out the cast, popping it up. You know, you're moving and you're covering water with the free rig. And when a fish does pick it up and bite, you can kind of reel down and just jack them on a spinning rod, which is kind of fun. So I use the Windbuster. You don't need to. You can pick pretty much any 7-foot. I would say any 7-foot to maybe even like a slightly longer medium power rod, so you can make big long casts and really cover a lot of water with the free rig. So that's all my thoughts and opinions. These are some of my favorite baits. I'll leave the links into the description on the hooks, the weights, and some of these baits that I use. But if you have any baits that you like, that you've been throwing on a free rig, I'd love to hear some more suggestions. I'm constantly experimenting with the free rig, trying different plastics, doing more things. If you got some baits that you love, throw them in the comments, and I'd like to check them out. So until next time, thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Hit like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.